Hi there, I'm Ben from PowerGenius, and I just want to take you through a very basic video of how the PowerGenius system manages hot water systems. And this will show you um, the difference between a normal hot water cylinder and how that works, and what the PowerGenius system does for a hot water cylinder. Now, obviously, the PowerGenius system can manage more than just a hot water cylinder. It can manage electric vehicle chargers, swimming pool pumps, whatever load in the home that you want to manage based on temperature or solar power. So let's get into it. This one is about hot water cylinders. So, PowerGenius hot water control. Firstly, we'll start with a normal hot water cylinder, and the way it normally works is you'll use a little bit of hot water in the home, and a cylinder has a pipe coming out the top, which is where the hot water comes out, and it also has a pipe in the bottom where the hot water, the cold water from the street comes in. It also has a thermostat and an element, so the thermostat controls the element, tells it when to turn on and off to reheat the water. So typically what will happen is you might have a shower, and that brings hot water out the top and cold water into the bottom. And when that cold water gets to the thermostat, it will turn the element on, and that will then reheat the section of water that was cooled down by the cold water coming in the bottom. And typically that happens all day long and overnight. Whenever you use hot water out the top and you use enough to hit that thermostat, it reheats it from the grid, buys power from the grid, and you reheat your hot water. Now, what happens if you use a whole lot of hot water? You might use 2 showers and a bath, and the element will turn on and it will start reheating immediately, and it will recirculate the hot water because hot water rises. It circulates that hot water through the cold body of water, and then eventually that all comes back. But again, you're buying that water, the energy to reheat that water from the grid. So with the PowerGenius, if you install a PowerGenius system, we will put a controller at the hot water cylinder, and we'll also put a temperature sensor higher up the cylinder, maybe 3/4 of the way up or maybe halfway up, depending on a few variables. But that will then take control of the power to the cylinder. Instead of the thermostat controlling the cylinder, now the PowerGenius is controlling the cylinder. So what that means is you can have a whole lot of hot water usage, and the thermostat might turn on and try and make the hot water turn on, but there's no power to the thermostat. And the PowerGenius sees that there is still enough hot water for you to use in the house, so it won't turn that thermostat on. So what it does is it then waits until the next day, and it will sense when there's excess solar energy being produced by your solar panels. And at that point, it will gradually turn the hot water cylinder on a bit like a light dimmer, and it will slowly reheat that cold body of water at the bottom of the cylinder with all that solar energy that you would have otherwise exported to the grid. Now, export to the grid is cheap. They don't pay you much, and buying it from the grid is expensive. So it's way better to use your own solar power and reheat your water that way than it is to buy it from the grid. So that's what the PowerGenius does every single day. It allows the bottom of the cylinder to stay cold, and then it'll only reheat from the grid in situations where the hot water gets, the cold water, sorry, gets above that temperature sensor level. So let's start on the left from late afternoon, assuming that the cylinder has been completely heated and is nice and hot, and then the sun's going down, so there's no more solar power available. We're at the late afternoon, and you use a little bit of hot water. and then we go into the evening usage, and maybe the evening usage causes the cold water to come above the temperature sensor of the PowerGenius. Then overnight, that PowerGenius will top up that cold body of water to around about 50, maybe 55 degrees, just enough so that you've got enough hot water to see you through the morning routine if there's a lot of usage. It may also leave that cold body of water cold if that doesn't reach the temperature sensor. So in the morning, you're going to use a little bit more hot water, you're going to use a little bit more cold water. And so what happens there is in the morning, more cold water comes in the bottom, and that displaces that warm water section, the 55-degree water, pushes further up the cylinder. You may or may not have a little bit of hot water left, but then when the sun comes out and your solar starts producing excess power, all of that cold and warm water in the cylinder is then reheated right back up to toasty hot, ready for another set of usage in the evening. So how does it actually look? So this is a cylinder that has a PowerGenius system retrofitted to it. So you don't need to buy a new cylinder. You just buy the PowerGenius box and a monitor at the switchboard and a little device that plugs into your internet router. And all of those devices communicate together. And you can see there halfway up this cylinder, there is a temperature sensor that's been installed. Now, this is professionally installed. These installations have been happening for decades in hot water cylinders. Back in the old days, they started out installing this type of sensor with hot water thermal systems where you had water actually going through the panels in the roof, and they would install a sensor halfway up the cylinder for exactly the same reason. So this is not new technology. That particular sensor being installed is not new technology. It's not dangerous to install that, and it does not void the warranty of a cylinder. So then you will then be able to save quite a bit of money each year, depending on the size of your cylinder. And how much you're going to save also depends on how big your solar is, how much load you use in the home, and how much hot water usage there is, combined with how big the cylinder is. So it's very difficult to predict exactly how much you're going to save, but the reality is you're definitely going to save a lot of power being purchased from the grid with the PowerGenius system, because it will prefer to use the power from your solar panels, and it will only top up from the grid if absolutely needed, so you don't get a cold shower. You also get a dashboard, so you will be able to see this data, and this is some data from a real system that was installed obviously a while ago. You can see there in 2018, we had a system installed where they hadn't yet replaced their hot water cylinder. They were changing from gas to hot water. So we installed the monitoring on the system first, and then we activated the hot water controller. So it's really helpful to see what happens in a normal situation. And this is when the hot water was installed. The hot water cylinder was installed. And so you can see there on the top left, you've got 3.356 kilowatts being purchased from the grid. Well, that's the load, that's the hot water cylinder turning on, whereas the solar was only at 600 watts there, and it's 2 minutes to 9. So the sun was just coming up. And then all day long for the rest of the day, they were exporting energy to the grid. And of course, you get paid a lot less to export the energy to the grid. And then at the end of the day, there was some cooking loads, and the solar turned back, the hot water turned back on again. They might have had a shower or just washing up while they're cooking, using some hot water. So it's not very efficient that way. You're buying a lot from the grid, and you're also exporting a lot to the grid. On the bottom right graph, you can see after the hot water system controller for the PowerGenius controller had been activated and turned on, they exported very little to the grid, and the green load was following the blue line, the solar production, almost exactly for pretty much the whole day. And that's with a hot water controller from being controlled by the PowerGenius system. You get a dashboard so you can actually see what's going on. It is a bit technical, but you get used to it. And you can see what's happening with your hot water system, and you can also see what's happening with the power. Is it what solar is being produced? What are you importing? What are you exporting? And what the load is in the home. So you can see there on that particular power graph that they are exporting a lot of energy to the grid. That's because the hot water cylinder has switched off in that particular situation. So that is a situation where you can see it's 4:30 at night. The hot water cylinder has already reached around about 60 degrees and it's turned off. And that's the thermostat inside the hot water cylinder, which we leave in place. And that turns the hot water off when it gets up to the level that the manufacturer recommends is safe for the cylinder. But you can see there the charts. You can see the temperature of the hot water. You can see the grid import and the export. You can see a lot of information if you want to. The other thing with the PowerGenius is that you can call us or email us and we can interpret that data for you, or we can go through something and we can change settings to make it work better for you. So I just want to thank you for watching the video. If you do have any questions, get in touch with us, and 0800 POW, POWGEN, first three letters of each word, or just go on to powergenius.net and send us an email or phone us from the phone number there. Thank you very much for watching, and look forward to talking soon.